breaking the rules to gain an advantage is the definition of cheating. All hacked Pokemon break the rules. The use of external devices, such as a mobile app, to modify or create items or Pokemon in a competitor's battle team is expressly forbidden. Competitors found to have Pokemon or items that have been tampered with may receive disqualification, regardless whether the Pokemon or items belong to that competitor or were traded for. There is no such thing as legal stats on a genned Pokemon. All modification of Pokemon makes that Pokemon illegal and rule-breaking. The advantage comes in from the time saved. Having more time to practice and gain experience is an objective competitive advantage. So are the infinite resources gained through hacking, since you can get Pokemon and items faster than humanly possible. I can't believe I need to spell out how hacking in a multiplayer video game is cheating, but that's where we're at with the Pokemon community. And the huge problem with competitive Pokemon is that every top VGC player is a cheater. We saw this at the Pokemon 2023 World Championships with a record amount of disqualifications because they upped their hack check and then tons of players got caught. And this isn't just you walk in and go to Worlds, you have to earn your invite. I had a talk with the second place player at the 2022 Pokemon World Championships who has admitted to ginning in the past, and they believe 95% of competitors at Pokemon Worlds are cheating. And it's also funny because the finalist of that 2022 World Championship got caught with hacked Pokemon, and even with 2023, the 2023 Pokemon World Champion used hacked Pokemon as well. This also means that Wolfe Glick is a 100% confirmed, proven, career-long cheater in Pokemon. His officially posted teams have been data mined by the maker of PK Hex and confirmed to be hacked multiple times. But it's always been obvious. You go back to the 2012 World Championships and Wolfe has a team of shiny, legendary Pokemon with perfect stats and hidden power. Wolfe also used a Dream Ball Raichu with an Egg move in Generation 6, which can never, ever, ever exist because male Pokemon do not pass down their balls when breeding. As strange as it sounds for the mascot of Pokemon, a female Dream World Pikachu was never made available. And then there's also just more instances of Wolfe Glick using cheated Pokemon, defending cheating, commissioning hacks, commissioning hackers to hack check his teams for him so he doesn't get caught anymore. Wolfe Glick is the biggest cheater in Pokemon, and people get mad at me for exposing that truth. And then people say, oh, you only talk about Wolfe Glick, why don't you talk about the other cheaters in Pokemon? Kind of showing how stupid and toxic the Pokemon community is, because I've done more videos on the other cheaters in Pokemon than I have on Wolfe Glick, but Wolfe Glick is the most prominent figure in competitive Pokemon and a former world champion, so it is the most important that everyone knows he is a cheater. If you take any player that's fairly known in VGC because they get a lot of top cuts or a lot of stream time, and just turns out they're cheaters. So we got Poke Alex, we got Eric Rios, they got signed by Movie Star Koi, and then immediately disqualified from the regionals because they had hacked Pokemon. And I've covered dozens of stories like this. So that is the truth of cheating in competitive Pokemon. Anyone saying anything else is lying, which is why this video is problematic. Cheating in competitive Pokemon, the honest truth, even though in the first word of the title, they cannot be honest. This is cheating by definition. There's no quotations around cheating unless you're already trying to poison the well and deflect from the severity of what's going on, or make it sound like it's not even really cheating. We look at someone like Carl Jobs. When they expose cheaters, they call them cheaters. The biggest cheater, the streamer cheater, the saddest cheater. All of these people are cheaters. So you can immediately tell this entire video is going to be BS and make excuses for cheating, even though that is not valid in any capacity. There is no gray area to cheating. You are deliberately choosing to harm others by cheating them, then lying about it to steal prize money and opportunity. That is objectively evil behavior when done on a habitual scale. Yeah, occasionally people give in to temptation and they do the wrong thing in the heat of the moment, but if they learn from that, they're not an evil person. When we have someone like Wolfe Glick, who has made his entire life about lying, cheating, and stealing in Pokemon, that is evil, and that is what I expose in Pokemon, but the Pokemon community gets mad at me for it. There is not one mention of Wolfe Glick cheating in this video because it is not an honest video. It brings up the World's 2023 cheaters, it makes note of Sejun Park's Magmar, but the rest of it is the garbage that I've debunked for years now because God forbid you have to buy and play Pokemon games to compete in competitive Pokemon to earn tens of thousands of dollars. It's the same excuses that don't even hold up. Pokemon is more accessible, time and money-wise, than every sport and most esports. A gaming computer and peripherals is going to be more expensive than a console and any amount of games you quote-unquote need for competitive Pokemon, even though you objectively do not need them. You do not need to buy Pokemon Sword and Shield or Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC to use Urshifu in VGC, and you don't even need it to obtain it because the entire franchise was built off of the Game Boy Link cable. That's why we have two versions of the game. The foundation of Pokemon is trading, and if VGC players can't get Pokemon from other VGC players without them being hacked, that means we have a big cheating problem. That's not Game Freak's fault, that's the fault of this disgusting community that supports cheating more than any other competitive discipline in the history of the world. And I've had this on screen for a while now because it really shows how low quality and dishonest the video is to try to use this as an argument in any capacity, because it's the memo that went out before the 2023 World Championship saying, "We strongly recommend you do not use Pokemon provided to you by other people." Well, that's because these are all cheaters that only know cheaters and they can't get Pokemon legitimately, but this has always been in the rules. Flashbang warning. Regardless of whether the Pokemon or items belong to that competitor or were traded for. This is not new language. These have always been the rules, and then VGC players were surprised when the rules were finally enforced. Also, the thing about this memo is it seems it's more of a reminder because at the 2023 North American International Championships, the top 4 was the test for this new hack check, and everyone failed. I've had players, I've had judges, and I've had Pokemon news outlets corroborate this. It didn't get like its huge thing because people want to remain anonymous and not get in trouble for that, because that's a pretty serious thing, but it kind of lines up with the events. And then we, either way, like 2023 Worlds happened, and we saw more disqualifications than ever before, and we don't even know how many players were actually disqualified. It was just that many of them. So yeah, what this shows is the argument is cheating is wrong. If you're not saying anything other than cheating is wrong, you're not being honest about the cheating problem in Pokemon. There's no other side to cheating. There's no trying to understand cheaters. If you don't like the rules, then you don't play. And if you think it's that big of a problem, then you vocally protest it instead of choosing to harm others by breaking the rules. And I've already debunked all the arguments defending cheating a dozen times now, so again, there's like extra nothing that holds up. I'm the only one in the Pokemon community being honest and reasonable, and I'm the most attacked for it because these entitled brats just don't want to work for any of their things. That's what it boils down to, and that's what I've been saying for over a decade. And of course, the top comment is about me because the Pokemon community is overwhelmingly toxic, hateful, and deranged. Much more reasonable than Verlisify will ever be. I have only been the most reasonable about this because I'm the only person being honest about it. Lying about the circumstances and misrepresenting all of competitive Pokemon or Pokemon acquisition because you don't want to play by the rules is not being reasonable. Literally, lol, he provides clear evidence and reasoning for both sides without calling the other side idiots. Except there's no evidence supporting cheaters. You break the rules, and you're a cheater. That's it. Without calling the other side idiots. The thing these idiots don't understand is that if you choose to deny fact, you are an idiot by definition. Wolfe Glick is a confirmed cheater with indisputable evidence. If you deny that fact, you are a stupid person. Same thing with believing any of the lies and nonsense going on with the defense of cheating. So it's also the evil where you are choosing to be wrong to support malicious acts. Verlisify does a disservice to the people who actually hold the opinion that ginning in official competitions is wrong because he's so aggressive about it. You cannot be too aggressive against cheating. So that's what I mean, where it's like these people are either so timid or deep down they just want to be entitled cheating brats. Not to mention, he's against all forms of cheating. Yes, a good, honest, reasonable person is against all cheating, even the ones that don't affect other people, except that doesn't exist. you are maliciously acting towards the developers and disrespecting them by going against their wishes. Same thing for undermining the work that legitimate players put into the game, or diminishing their experience by illegally hacking the game to improve your own. The narcissism of cheaters should be self-evident, but it's crazy how, like, these people just don't understand. You are not above the rules. You're not above the developers. You are not that important of a person. And there's no slippery slope fallacy here. We have already slipped down the slope with so much momentum, we are tunneling miles deep into the Earth's surface. That is why the cheating problem is so bad in Pokemon, that people went from, but it's just my single player playthrough, you know, I just want to do a randomizer to, I'll just use my hacked Pokemon friends and everyone's okay with it. And then it gets normalized in the community, so people just start battling other people with their hacked Pokemon thinking it's okay. They take it to the online ladder because Battle Spot, Battle Stadium, that's not VGC. I'll never use it in VGC, and now every top player in VGC is cheating and using hacked Pokemon. He's legit called someone a horrible father by doing that to play Wi-Fi battles with his son in Sun and Moon. That's a lie. I called him a horrible father because he hacks for competitive, not to play with his son. So once again, showing like the Pokemon community can only lie about me because there's no way to take down my arguments. It's like a new insane lie every couple of days I see. That's like, wow. So that's what they're saying now. They have twisted reality into that because it turns out nothing I've said makes me a bad person because I'm the only one being reasonable. This is a narcissist that thinks they're better than everyone else and is allowed to harm them because he has a job and kids. He is not teaching his kids that lying, cheating, and stealing is wrong. He's doing the opposite. That objectively makes him a horrible parent. You shouldn't have to work for your things. Cheating is cool. A+ parenting. Where's the lie? What did I say here that's wrong? Be a hardworking, upstanding role model, but no one in the Pokemon community could ever. My 7-year-old niece is more reasonable and less attention-seeking than that dude. He's not a high bar to cross. Just the derangement, just the insanity. And then more lies. Verlis hates Smogon for having terrible crimes of having unofficial rules which you aren't required to partake in. Completely ignoring that Smogon are the bullies throughout the entire history of Pokemon. You get attacked, berated, bullied, insulted, more than anything I've done to people for not playing their unofficial casual format. And it's really not fair when everyone in the Pokemon community acts like idiots and then I'm at fault for calling them idiots. You will hatch the eggs. You will soft reset over and over for 0 speed IVs. You will get every spin-off and side game to have access to all the Pokemon. You will pay for a trashy online service. They are so terminally online, they're bringing in this societal discourse into Pokemon where we're talking about competing to have a career and make tens of thousands of dollars in a competitive discipline. And they think they're making some kind of grand moral stand for the people. I hate this so much, it's insane. It's an entirely self-created problem. It's not. Making the rules, play the game, is as reasonable as it gets. There's no other way to call it other than entitled brats that are completely worthless because they refuse to do any amount of work in their life. They are also completely ignorant of sports. They are completely ignorant of competition because they have never worked for anything. You must dedicate and sacrifice everything if you want to be competitive in a game or a sport. That's life. It's always been that way. Pokemon is no different, and that's why Pokemon is the only community that is this deranged and toxic. Banning Jinning just gives an advantage to whoever has the most money instead. One of the most upvoted comments. Again, just kind of proving you know nothing about true competition in the world. If you can afford a better coach, better equipment, better dietitian, better everything, then you are going to have an advantage. That is a legal advantage. Hacking Pokemon is an illegal advantage. Cheating is wrong and indefensible. Catering to cheaters does not create a more fair and healthy competition. There's a fundamental misconception about piracy. It's almost always a service problem. No. Virtually everyone pirating was never going to buy it to begin with. That's the point. It's never been a rebellion for value proposition. It's been, I can't afford it, or I don't want to pay anything for my things, and why should I when I can just download it for free? This whole debacle is the dev's fault. Simple as that. This conversation shouldn't even exist in the first place. And yet I'm the one that's unreasonable when this person can't even accept that cheating is wrong. And I've already debunked this a million times. Play the tape. Also, you don't need to own 4 to 5 Pokemon titles. You only need one game to compete. So again, it's not against the rules to trade. You are not required to have more Pokemon copies. And then, if we just get into like the extra time, Pokemon is still easily the most accessible competitive discipline, even factoring in like having to have a couple $100s in games. Let's go over some other games, like chess. Chess is popping off right now, and it's one of the most popular forms of competition in the entire world, but it's always been a really big deal, and you can find articles how much I spent on becoming a Grandmaster. And that's another thing these brats and losers in the Pokemon community refuse to understand is like, if you're competing, you are now in an elite level, or if you're trying to become the best, or qualify for worlds, or win money, which is also why you are stealing if you are cheating, breaking the rules to deprive legitimate players of that prize money. But if you want to be competitive on a tournament level for any game, sport, or esport, you need to put in the time, work, and money to earn it. So here's what happens if you want to become a chess grandmaster. You need private coaching. This guy says, conservatively 60,000 Australian dollars, more like 75,000, but also not just direct private coaching, buying books and magazines and doing a lot of other research. That could be another 40,000 Australian dollars. And that doesn't include travel, which is going to be tens of thousands of more dollars because you have to participate in tournaments and then do consistently well to get your rating up. And then you go to other events, international events. So yeah, if you want to be a grandmaster, the elite of chess, it's going to cost an insane amount of money to get there. But again, that's true of other sports and even esports. There's also non-financial expenses. Of course, there's expenses beyond money. There's also time. I spent tens of thousands of hours on my chess to the point where I earned the Grandmaster title. But there's also time spent on deliberate practice. There's still another 10,000 plus hours spending reading the chess books, often visualizing the games in my head without a board, solving chess puzzles, researching chess base, everything else. Calculation based on me doing this for 2 to 3 hours a day since 2002. And again, that's what the Pokemon community, these millennials and zoomers that have no life experience, they don't want to work or earn anything in their life, they don't care about anything, they are just pure narcissists. They don't understand what real sacrifice is, the dedication required to be competitive in any discipline. One of the arguments for hacking in Pokemon is that the only thing that matters is what happens in battle, except every competitive game and sport in history debunks that. What happens off the field is as important to influencing what happens on the field. You aren't allowed to dope in sports because your job is taking away from your training. And then people will say, oh, but steroids makes you unnaturally strong, so it's unfair. Except that's completely false because there's many banned substances that don't give you any physical advantage. It just improves training efficiency and recovery time. Now, the reason why I use chess as an example is because it's really good at exposing ignorance. A lot of people see chess and go, oh, a couple dollar board, it's free on chess.com. I can look up games, I can do like online articles and free research. So yeah, chess is incredibly accessible, except no, to be elite, it shows that it is incredibly complex and expensive, both for time and money. But it's also everything else, like sports. If you want to be an Olympic athlete, you're going to need a job on top of training to become one of the best in your country to represent against the world. Just because you're competing in the Olympics doesn't mean you get a free ride or have any special privilege. There's a series called Day Jobs that shows what Olympic athletes do when they're not training because they need another job to fund, and some of these people are even going to college while having a part-time job while training hard enough and putting in all of that time and work to become an Olympic athlete. And then the argument in Pokemon's like, oh, no one has time to play for a couple hundred hours to become competitive in Pokemon, especially if you have a kid or job or family. No, these are just entitled brats. And it's not just a couple of cherry-picked examples. Most Olympic athletes need a job to fund their Olympic dream. And they're going to be forced into debt because it's very expensive. I found this video, Olympians in Debt. You can watch full thing in the description down below so you can like not be ignorant like everyone in Pokemon Challenges audience and what these bad actors are creating in their communities. So he says he got $70,000 to $80,000 in debt to become an Olympic snowboarder while also being a plumber on the side. So this dude works as a plumber to put in more work for training to be an Olympic snowboarder and still ends up in debt. And people are going to say, well, yeah, you can make hundreds of thousands or millions as an Olympic athlete. That is the 1%. That is the very lucky, very elite, talented few. That also doesn't mean people like this guy are allowed to use steroids to catch up to them because they don't have the sponsors, or they don't have a rich family to fund their dreams starting from an early age, or have other connections that make it easier for them. No, it's just going to be different for everyone, but that doesn't allow you to break the rules. And that is true if you want to be competitive in almost every sport or esport. Pokemon is actually one of the most accessible forms of competition, even if you use these extremely over-exaggerated, dishonest numbers coming from people like Pokemon Challenges and I'm a Blissey. It's still less time and money than any other form of competition. I had this video randomly pop up in my YouTube recommended recently, but I mean good on the algorithm because it's surprisingly relevant. We restarted our golf career on a $1,500 budget. Now that was for 2 people, but what it means is that it's an extreme challenge, like a content-worthy challenge to start golf on a $750 budget when you're also sharing expenses with another person. And that's just the bare minimum. It's not like, oh, I'm ready to go pro off of that. No, your gear is going to wear out. There's going to be many recurring costs, and that's before you've even entered tournament for the first time with golf. And then when it comes to esports, thousands of dollars more to get into esports than Pokemon, because you're going to need the top of the line gaming rig, or else you're just at a disadvantage if you have less frame rate or less monitor refresh rate and worse peripherals. Like, to be elite, you need to have the best stuff, and that's going to cost more money. And even for Smash Bros, the cost of controllers alone is going to be more than anything it costs to get into competitive Pokemon. So yeah, when we go back to this, again, we can just kind of see how evil the manipulation is from Pokemon Challenges to make this seem like a bad thing. That you need to have a couple of copies of Pokemon games, but if you're competing in Pokemon, you should appreciate and enjoy the franchise. Also, it's the largest franchise in the world, with 20+ million copies being sold for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and Pokemon Sword and Shield, and then, you know, over 15 million copies for a lot of the other games, which means everyone already has the games. So you need to play Pokemon games that you should already own, and it's only 20 to 60 hours of active playtime, I guess, for each game or for each team or something, and it only goes down with experience because breeding is a skill. If you take someone that has a lot of skill in training competitive Pokemon and someone that's never done it before, the person with skill training competitive Pokemon is going to do it much faster, and then in a world without hacked Pokemon and all the cheating that's going on, it means you actually have an advantage from being better at training Pokemon. That's what competition is about. Everything, not only what happens on the field or in battle. And extra time from team changes or meta developments, which again just proves that cheating gives a massive advantage because you're disadvantaging the player following the rules by hundreds of hours of work that is required by the rules and 100% necessary to competitive Pokemon. If you want to get Challenger in League of Legends, that's going to be thousands of hours of practice or games, and that doesn't even guarantee you a spot on an academy team, let alone pro. So you're not even making a living after dedicating an insane amount of time, money, and resources into other sports or esports. Also, it's a complete joke and pure hypocrisy from the Pokemon community that now transfer Pokemon are a bad thing, because just last generation, millions of people in the Pokemon community boycotted Game Freak because they removed the national dex from the games. You've never been able to catch every available Pokemon in a set of games, and in 2017 and earlier, when it was the same thing for VGC, no one had any complaints. It's only now that these cheaters are getting caught that you're seeing all the hypocrisy and complaints because they're crying that they're being held accountable.